have is that, at the national level, the discussion about competition in developing countries is that you have to govern your markets. And because you're trying to exploit things like scale effects and large-scale industry, and that in fact there's a high correlation between the size of your companies and the rate of growth. The larger firms you have in your economy, the faster you grow, like Korea and Taiwan. And so that is at the national level. So the issue is not simply making markets free, but actually regulating and facilitating the growth of enterprise, which means you're moving towards large-scale enterprises. And one of the arguments for regional integration, of course, is to allow for firms to get larger. So in a sense, you have to worry about, on one hand, that development requires more and more large-scale operations, and that can lead to concentration, and that creates problems of competition within your, within your own region. And what I hear from your discussion is much more about not how to facilitate large-scale production, but how to restrict non-competitive policies. And yet, if you look at the European model carefully, they're very concerned about internal competition, but they don't worry too much if Airbus is not competing properly globally. That's the Boeing's problem, in that they do have regional champions, if you like, who they allow to be non-competitive. Okay? Airbus is a good example. Can we imagine within our region a reflection about having regional champions, which are big and may not, and they become regional, but which are regulated as opposed to simply competing? Do you have legal instruments for doing that? For allowing the MTNs or Dangotes or all that of Africa to function as big players and able to compete globally and therefore very large. Yeah? They have to be very large. Do we have space for managing that?
Competition doesn't restrict you from becoming big. In fact, every country and all these policies, what we're trying is to promote business, you become bigger. There are so many advantages which are associated with big. We only make sure that you don't abuse. By you being big, you don't abuse the market, to foreclose the market, to stop growth from the small players. So it is the abuse we look at. Otherwise, if you are big and you are not breaking those regulations, you are not foreclosing the market. I'll give you the example, which is very common in our region. Coca-Cola. It's one of the biggest beverage companies. They'll come up with certain practices which stop others from entering the market. Distribution agreements, so that anybody who distributes their products cannot distribute competing products. They come up with the geographical allocations. Once you are their distributor at point A, then they won't put any other distributor. So it is a lot of these competitive practices which foreclose the market, which make others not to grow. Where the government says, okay, Coca-Cola, you're investing in our country. For the next 20 years, we won't allow anybody in this business. South African breweries, we are coming to open up a plant. But in the next 20 years, don't allow another brewery company to come in. Those are the things we deal with. But those through expertise, professionalism, technological superiority, they come up, they become big. We encourage that type of companies. After all, we want even the small money to have a level playing field so that he has got chances to grow. We've got a problem right now, Professor, in the region, especially in Malawi, Zambia, Mozambique. Tobacco and cotton industry. you find that your grandfather used was, what do they call these farmers? Contract farmers. There's still, that picture will be in front of a small hut showing the registration card. Even the grandson will come there and there's no improvement. There's nothing trying to deal with tackle issues of poverty. So you are right. Those are the issues also we're doing. After all, our competition principles and the model, they are based on the EU principles. We only differ in the approach when we come to issues of public interest. National champions, is it true? In fact, COMESA right now has started negotiating for the regional industrial policy, and I think the ESA have got one. And if you look at these industrial policies, they really promote or encourage national champions. And if you follow Zambia, it has gone back to what we may say, Professor Ndolo. Is that counter model? Where the Professor Ndolo maybe can... We're coming up now with a giant corporation which will deal with creating national champions. That's how I understand it. So national champions, it is really one instrument for economic growth, which I think most African countries are going back to. Why? Because the private sector, it is failing to create jobs. It is failing to do with poverty issues. I'm sorry I can't answer more than that, but the thing is, I agree with you that any good competition law model should be one which goes beyond to create growth.
My question is linked to what the professor just said or asked. I was going to ask you that at national level, I think we struggle to have a balance between competition policy, trade policy, and industrial policy. What does that mean? I mean, you have some firms which will be dominating the market or have a market share of plus 90%, and they need protection in some way. But it is only foreign competition that is bringing some competition into the market. So I don't know, in terms of policy sequencing here, what should come first? Is it competition policy? Is it common trade policy or a common industrial policy? My view would be that we should have a common industrial policy first and common trade policy first, and then competition will follow.
Well, thank you very much. I'm Tlohelang Auman from Lesotho. I just have 2 questions. It is very interesting to see how COMESA attempted to deal with competition at regional level, but I have just 2 questions for you. Whether there has been an attempt as well to harmonize company law in COMESA, because competition law is linked to company law. And also, I want to find out how you define the market, because trade itself disciplines anti-competitive behavior. And I want to find out how you would define, if you're investigating anti-competitive behavior, will you see COMESA as a whole as the area that you focus on, or you focus on a certain country? Thank you.
Thank you. I'll be brief. I can't give a comprehensive answer to this. Which comes first, industrial, trade, competition policy? I mean, if you are given to draft an industrial policy for Lesotho, what are the issues which will be contained in that document? So I think that will answer. Look at all the industrial policies, see what constitutes an industrial policy. Now, definition of market. In a nutshell, definition of a market, when we are looking at competition issues, it consists of 2 things: geographical market. Geographical market, if you are doing competition, if you're analyzing at a national level, then it is where that activity happens. If you are talking about sale of bananas, you are from Lesotho, is it? On that I don't know Lesotho well. You go to the area where those bananas are sold. If it is at commercial level, it's at the common market level. Then geographical, and then you look at the product itself. This product, what are the substitutes? Which products compete with the product in question? If you are talking about beer, can we say water is a substitute? If you send your wife to get you 2 pints of beer, she finds there's no beer, she brings 2 bottles of water. What will be your reaction? In other words, I'm telling you, their objective and how we look at these issues in competition. When we say we are assessing, making a competition assessment, there are rules which we use so that there is transparency and predictability, so that even yourself you know what we are going to do. Yes, this one I said that industrial policy involves all these issues. In fact, what I tell Dr. Mangeni at COMESA, I always tell him that, you see, competition is part of the trade policy. That's what I always tell him, that we should work together with the trade division of COMESA. And, company law and the competition. Apparently, I was a registrar of companies also in Zambia. You are from Lesotho? Yeah, I was a registrar of companies. And I drafted the companies. The current companies, they act in Zambia. I was one of the key drafters. Now, the relationship. I think the objectives are different, you see. The other company law, what it does is to create a vehicle of conducting trade. It just creates an instrument. This instrument, the name will be the company. And then the laws tell you how this vehicle, the company, will attract with the people, so that it does not abuse in its dealing with people. That's what the company law does. While the competition looks at the behavior of this vehicle on the market. So the objectives are quite different. The other one gives this corporate entity. If you look at company law, first it gives the corporate entity. Here is somebody who's not a person, who's given legal personality, the same power as a person. I think that's what company law does. So there's some difference in that. But when their behavior on the market, you may say that their competition regulates. Company law also regulates. Maybe that's why you may find some interface or some common grounds. But they are both necessary. See, the whole ultimate objective of all business-related statutes, whether you talk about investment, stock exchange, what, they are all meant to protect us from the likely abuse. Telling these corporate structures, which are not human in nature, the legal persons, that they don't abuse us. That you can't do this, you can't do this, you can't do this. That's how I understand most of the business-related laws, what they try to do. It is just to protect the money on the world so that there's no abuse on them in the market.
But just to add just a one-liner of thanking Dr. Lipimile for the answers and the insights that we have learned from him on COMESA and how there is that interface. And perhaps just to end with a caution that it's always a problem when you have trade lawyers or economists trying to argue competition issues. And that's always a problem. And usually you find that they are relegated to be subsidiary issues, and not much justice is done on it. And before you know it, what you call as a national champion in your country is actually not your national champion. It's a multinational, not your national as such. So thank you very much for your attention.